Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Susanna Ayeti and I'm the Agency Portfolio Marketing Manager at PCB. Today we are presenting Overcoming ISO 40001 EMS Implementation Challenges, and our presenter is Mr. Eyo Ogunkoya. He is a Principal Agency and Risk Management Consultant at Generative Agency Inc. His areas of specializations are Occupational Health and Safety, Environmental Management, Enterprise Risk Management, and Quality Assurance. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenter by typing your questions in the question pane of control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. You can also use the raise hand function. We will unmute you and you will have a chance to ask the question directly to our presenter. And now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Mr. Eyo. Mr. Eyo, you may start the presentation.
Thank you, Susanna. I want to seize this opportunity to thank every attendee that is able to make this presentation this day because I value your time and I appreciate you being here with us. As the topic has been presented, I would like to go through the overview before we run through the slides. Today we'll be looking at minimum requirements for ISO 14001 environmental management system. We'll be looking at certain barriers that may come up during implementation that may hinder a successful implementation of ISO 14001. We'll also be looking at strategies that we can apply in order to achieve a successful implementation of ISO 14001 environmental management system. However, before I continue this presentation, I would like to let you know that I will implore you to stay till the end of this presentation because there are critical slides from slide 15 downwards. That does not mean that every slide is important, but I would indulge you to pay a lot of attention to slide 15 and downwards. ISO 14001, we know it's a standard, and it's a set of guidelines that is composed of specific requirements towards environmental management. And this requirement, for the purpose of this presentation, I've decided to partition it into two: administrative requirements and technical requirements. Administrative requirements, these are governing requirements that dictate the duties and responsibilities, corporate commitments, and management strategies surrounding the implementation of ISO 14001. I would encourage us to bear in mind that while ISO 14001 EMS standard, it's a sound document. It tells us what to do. However, it doesn't tell us how to do them. And that is the essence of technical requirements. So meeting administrative requirements is largely driven by strategic decision makers, like the board of directors of an organization, and as well as senior managers within the corporate body. So these are just some examples of administrative requirements. Environmental scope, environmental policy, environmental objective, resources, roles, responsibilities, and authority. Communication. For communication, we are looking at both internal communication within the organization and external communication, which we include other stakeholders, such as government agencies. It could be your client, it could be your customer, and the likes. Control of documents and records, that is key. However, it falls under administrative requirement. It's key in the sense that your due diligence as a company or as an organization lies within the proof that you have, which is often documents in the form of records. And management review. We should also bear in mind that sometimes, depending on the organization, the operations environment, this can be driven by corporate politics as well. Technical requirements. These are science-based criteria used to evaluate and improve the interactions between operational processes and the environment, which may be not negative or positive in nature. Meeting technical requirements is extremely driven by two things. One, knowledge of science, and two, technical competencies of the environmental professional. We should bear it in mind that the environmental professional is that individual, the consultant, or the internal consultant within the organization that is given the burden to help achieve ISO 14001. So some of the technical requirements, these are environmental aspects. I'll pause here and just to draw our attention to environmental aspects. Environmental aspect is the backbone of your EMS, because that is where all the assessments in terms of your product, the end of life of your product, your inputs and all that, that's where it is being assessed as in terms of the interaction it has with the environment. Other technical requirements are environmental targets. These are KPI, key performance indicators, which you have to measure, you have to analyze, you have to monitor as well. Environmental legal requirements. That is also key because you have to have a sound understanding of the legislation surrounding your operations. In most cases, it could be local, provincial or state or federal laws. And in some cases, depending on the size of the operation and the nature of the business, it can also be influenced by international laws. Also, competency training and awareness, non-conformity corrective and preventive actions, environmental EMS audits, and environmental programs. All these are technical requirements. And for someone that is going to be developing this, it is more of an expectation that they should have a sound science background and as well be very familiar with EMS and the way it works. When developing the manual, it is imperative to understand the interrelationship between the administrative requirements and the technical requirements. That the ISO 14001 EMS standard only identifies what is required of your EMS and not the details of the requirement itself or how to conduct certain environmental assessments, which I said earlier on, which is dictated by the competencies of the environmental professional. So again, the person, the individual that is developing your EMS manual and also helping you through the implementation of the manual is key in terms of their qualification. So let us quickly look at the competencies. When I keep saying competencies, these are things that you should be looking for in an individual that will be helping you to develop your EMS. They should have minimum of Bachelor of Science in environmental related degree. They should have training such as lead auditor training in ISO 14001 EMS. The individual should have minimum of 3 years of experience either in EMS development or in its implementation. That individual should belong to a certified environmental professional body that is reputable and regulated. So when you have that kind of individual, it is very certain that you will have a quality product or probably overall deliverable, which will be your EMS manual as the first phase of your implementation. Then the second phase will be the action, the doing of those things entailed in the manual itself. So in implementing ISO 14001, there are certain barriers that would prevent you from achieving a successful end. So the definition I gave to this is the process of establishing action-based component of requirements or requirements of the EMS manual and incorporating those actions into the organization's operational processes. Implementation barriers are those factors that prevent the establishment of EMS itself. And some of these barriers, I just listed 10 barriers, and it could be an exhaustive list because we also want to have at the back of our mind that we are dealing with humans, and human error sometimes can be unpredictable. So some of these barriers, like I said, lack of organizational leadership commitment. If you do not have a sincere backing of the organizational leadership, your EMS will fail. The implementation phase will fail because they are the key driver of the success of your EMS. Defining environmental objectives, and that is where this also speaks to the competency of the individual, the environmental consultant, because in defining objectives, this individual will help to guide the minds of the leadership of the organization in thinking through what are critical to the operation. Because I'll quickly make a reference to an example. I do not have an inside knowledge of BP, British Petroleum, but I always make it as an example from their recent loss, because that is an unimaginable loss of over 50 billion US dollars. And from the history of BP, we know that this incident is preventable. I'm talking of the 2010 incident at the Gulf of Mexico. So your objectives is critical because that's what defines what you intend to achieve. Poor budgeting or inadequate funding. It is very important that you have a full understanding of what is going to cost you to develop your manual and as well to implement the manual within your operation. Other challenges could also be finding a highly competent environmental professional. Based on my own experience, I've seen situations, and I'll give you an example. There's an international, a multinational oil producing company that I worked with last year. And what happened was they hired a first consultant. He couldn't develop the EMS. They hired the second consultant. He couldn't do the same thing. But the second consultant was the person that actually recommended me to develop their EMS, which I did, and ended up handing over 241-page documents to them within 6 months. So what I'm saying is, people sometimes might tell you that they can do it. It's your responsibility to verify what they have done and what they are capable of doing. And non-retainership of environmental consultants. It's very important, and it's easier for everyone to retain that individual consultant that starts the process. I would always encourage organizations to retain that environmental professional or the environmental consultant that started the development of the manual, to see them through the implementation phase as well. Setting and measuring environmental targets. Environmental targets can be a little bit finicky, for the lack of better words. You have to be specific, and they have to be measurable. You have to know what you are looking for, and you have to know how to measure them. Quality of environmental aspects assessment. Just like I said earlier on, I said environmental aspect assessment is a backbone of your the backbone of your EMS, because that's where the assessments are detailed in terms of the environmental impact of your operation on the environment. Complexities of organizational structure. How many layers do you have to go through to get things done within your organization? You have to keep it simple. You have to have the environmental professional to have direct link to as high as the CEO or the chairman of the organization. Like I said earlier on, these are the people that drives the success of your EMS. Size of organization and number of employees. This is critical as well, because you need to have the employees understand the goal and the objectives of the EMS and what needs to be actualized. And when you have a lot of, if you have a big organization, that means you need to partition your employees into different groups in order to be able to pass the information across. And mind it, sometimes information are not the same when you have different sessions. So that's another one aspect of the challenges that one could face. Complexities of operations. How many layers do you have to go through in terms of the operational steps from transitioning a material into a product? So that also could be a barrier in how you implement your EMS. There are other barriers that may not have been mentioned in this presentation. Some of the additional barriers, such as human errors, I've mentioned that are not foreseeable and may hinder a successful implementation. If you don't, a good example of this is if you don't have the full buy-in of your employees, because don't forget, the employees, especially the frontline workers, these are the engine of the operation. They make things work. They drive the company, and they are the ones that would actually implement the EMS. If you do not have the buy-in, you will have challenges implementing your EMS and even getting a successful end. EMS deliverables. So now we're into the strategies that we need to adopt in order to be able to have a successful implementation. Deliverables are components through which both administrative and technical requirements are met and continuous improvements are achieved. These deliverables, they have to be tangible. So what are the qualities? You might be wondering that what are the qualities of the deliverables that I'm talking about? These are the KPIs that you have to measure. They have to be accurate. They have to be valid. They have to be repeatable. They have to be relevant to your operation. They have to be measurable. You should be able to quantify them. And you have to be able to analyze them, because you have to be able to involve statistics to be able to make comparison within your data that you've collected. Now, this is a model that Generative HSE Inc. Canada has developed in order to help organizations to achieve a successful implementation of their EMS. You have to identify the deliverables. So usually these deliverables, they are originating from EMS objectives, because they help you to achieve the objectives or goals that you have set as an organization, and as well as the environmental aspect of the EMS. However, they are spelled out or defined in environmental targets and programs. So you will find these deliverables embedded in your environmental targets and your environmental programs. Then you have to reassess the deliverables. If you do not implement your EMS right away, if there's a kind of a time lag between the time which you've developed the EMS manual and your implementation time, you need to reassess. Things like you need to ask yourself, as our operation processes changes, have they changed? Have we introduced a new step into our process, or have we taken out a process? And some of these steps in the process could be critical in terms of cost implication of implementing your EMS programs. So you have to prioritize your deliverable. When you are prioritizing your deliverables, your prioritization should not be based on just cost. Do not focus on the bottom line alone or the dollar. You should also focus on how much impact will this deliverable have in terms of improving the environment. So you also need to facilitate employee engagement. Employee engagement would include your employee training, and you should always have stakeholders meetings with them so that they have the sense that you are carrying them along and they are being valued, so they can help you achieve the end, which is a successful one that you are looking forward to. So you have to communicate these deliverables to all stakeholders, even within your organization and outside the organization, and that's where you have to communicate with governmental agencies. You have to analyze your deliverables. So when you collect your raw data, you have to do analysis in terms of statistics, because this is how you can determine if you are meeting your targets or not. So a good example, if you say you are going to achieve 20% reduction in a particular factor, an environmental factor, so you need to be able to calculate what your baseline is, and next year you should be able to compare in terms of quantity to be able to see that 20% reduction from where you are, from your baseline. So you have to quantify the deliverables, which I'm actually going in the wrong direction. I'm supposed to go from implement deliverables to quantify, then you analyze, then you communicate in that sequence. Then you establish deliverable baseline, because your baseline at that point, based on your first year of implementation, your first year, that's where you establish a baseline. Your baseline will be your reference point moving forward as your company progresses into the future. So you always make reference to your baseline, and you can determine how much achievement you've made along the line. So the last point will be to audit and monitor. Usually the deliverables, we suggest that you have an annual audit done on your EMS every year, and a triennial, which is a requirement for maintenance of your certification, so which will be every 3 years as well. You have to continuously monitor your deliverables so that you can have a knowledge of a real-time change when something either goes right or goes wrong during the implementation of your EMS. It is imperative that organizational leaders, operations managers, and environmental professionals need to be aware and ensure that those deliverables are interpreted, because usually when you're familiar with statistics, especially using software like SAS, where you have to write some codes, and you see, just for you to be able to analyze a data, you might have 20-30 pages of document. So talk less of different sets of data. So you cannot present all these documents to the board of directors, obviously. However, you have jargons, professional jargons embedded in those data. So you need to, it's the job of the environmental professional to interpret this information to the organizational leaders and the operations managers in a way that they understand what you are looking for. The information has to be reported, and it has to be monitored as well. Usually monitoring in this aspect is done through auditing, and that's where you have you need to have a very competent management review representative. Your management review representative have to be sound and familiar with environmental requirements as well, so that even if there's a gap, they can pick on those gaps and bring it forward. In summary, now I'm just going to wrap up this presentation before I turn it back to Susanna for questions, for me to take questions. The successful implementation of ISO 14001 EMS is largely dependent on the commitment, and I'm just reiterating this, is largely dependent on the commitment of organizational leadership and environmental professionals involved at the levels or phases of implementation of the EMS, in conjunction with the engagement of right resources. And why I'm saying right resources here, I do not like organization wasting money. We should always use the approach of the difference between needs and wants. What does the organization need versus what do you want? I find a lot of organizations expending money on wants rather than needs. And these are wasted resources which you can be put back, which you can put back into your bottom line to increase your bottom line or to improve other processes within your organization. So you have to engage the right resources in order to meet both the administrative and the technical requirements. And at this junction, I will turn the baiting back to Susanna to moderate the question session. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, Susanna.
Mr. Ayo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
okay,
can hear
great.
you now.
Yeah, thank you very much for this informational session. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions in the question box in your right-hand control panel. Okay, so the first question is how to convince companies of any size or industry why it is important to implement this standard.
Why is it important to convince them?
No, why is it important to implement the standard? So how should we convince companies to implement it?
Well, usually the first and foremost, there should be an interest. Because what I found over the years is that I realized that legal requirements, both the local legal requirements and the federal requirements within the jurisdiction where the operation is located, often have a lot of impact on the interest on implementing it. Also, secondly, we should be able to sell some points of the benefits for them seeing the impact that the operation have on the community and how the EMS intends to improve that relationship. A good example, if you're a company that discharges effluent through wastewater into a water body in a locality, we know for a fact that certain heavy metals such as cadmium are responsible for causing diseases such as cancers. So now it's the responsibility, it's more of a social responsibility and a moral obligation for that company to have the wastewater treated before discharge. So now it's the responsibility of the EP or the environmental professional to sell it to that company to see the benefit of implementing the EMS in order to have a better impact or an improved impact on the environment. Because I tell you, if you have a business, when you employ individuals, one way or the other, your operation will have an impact on the environment, be it positive or negative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayo. The next question is, do you recommend hiring a consultant when implementing this standard?
It's very imperative to understand that you have to develop your manual first. That's your starting point. And that is where you have, you're able to weight your operation against the standard. It is very important to have a consultant, because remember that a consultant is not an employee. So they don't really have an internal vested interest in your organization. What they are there to do is to ensure that your company succeed and fulfill the requirements of the environmental, of the EMS, ISO 14001. So they do not engage themselves in your corporate politics. So I will always recommend that you hire a consultant to develop your EMS, and also it's in your best interest to retain that consultant to help you with the implementation, which is a different phase of the EMS. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, according to your experience, what are the most common issues in ISO 40001 implementation project you faced, and what was your approach to resolve them?
One thing that I face is the leadership. Sometimes they underestimate the impact the operation have on the environment. And the only way, well, I shouldn't say the only way, one of the ways that I've been able to overcome that quite often, based on my exposure and my experience, is that I let them see the benefits. I educate them. I bring their attention to certain things that they need to see. A good example, hypothetically, if I were employed by BP, and also looking from the perspective of health and safety, they wouldn't have had that incident. And I can tell you that because I wouldn't be there to favor individuals, rather I'm there to ensure that they are in compliance with the legislation. So it's very important that the leadership, they understand what is at stake, what penalties can be paid, and also other challenge that I have faced is the employee. Employees too can underestimate the importance of EMS because they have limited knowledge about the EMS. So it is our responsibility as consultants or environmental professional to sell it to them, get their buy-in, so that when they are taking measurements of those deliverables, they are happy doing it. They know what they are doing. They understand the errors if they make errors. So by so doing, these are some of the ways that I've been able to overcome some of the challenges during the implementation phase in my own experience. Thank you.
Thank you. So you are saying that one of the critical success factors is organizational leadership commitment. This issue comes up often in implementing the international standards in general. In your experience, how should one deal with this issue?
There are certain things that could be, I'm just trying to word this in a different way. It also depends on the experience of the organization. So if they've had penalties, previous incidents, they could be eager to learn from that, and the leaders know that what's at stake. Also, a good example, I'll go straight back to BP. After losing $55 billion, so just for us to, I know everyone on this platform understand how much that is, but let us put it more into perspective. So we are looking at $1 million in 55,000 places. That's a whole lot of money. So now, not until that happened to BP, now they re-engineered their whole organization. The leadership became very interested in moving the organization forward. So you don't really need to do any work as a consultant in that kind of situation. They've learned their lesson. But if it could be a different scenario if they don't have any history. Then your job is to educate the leadership, and also let them see the potential losses that they could encounter in that kind of situation if they fail to implement their EMS. Thank you.
Mr. Ayer, thank you very much for this presentation. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and we will answer to other questions via email. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation. We would appreciate it if you could complete it and provide your feedback. Also, if you are aware of a topic that you would like to discuss and participants would benefit from, please feel free to write down your suggestions. On behalf of PCB and our presenter, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.